Hi there, and welcome to another episode of the Trans 101 series. My name is Chase, and today we're going to be talking about fertility. So I'm going to be talking about fertility for people who are on testosterone, so are either trans men or non-binary folk, and people who are on estrogen, so trans women or trans feminine folk or non-binary folk as well. Alright, so I'm going to start by talking about people with sperm who would like to have children with their own DNA later on in the future. Now, it is best to do it before you start estrogen, alright? You will go to a sperm bank, it'll cost about $250 to $1,000 a year to keep it, and your sperm is actually good forever. Okay, some studies have said that it's not good forever, it's only good for a certain amount of time. Others have said that it is good forever. There was a research actually where they tested some sperm that was frozen for 40 years and it was still as good as it was before. So if you started estrogen at a very young age, alright, and you even did hormone blockers at a young age and you never had your natal puberty, you are not able to save any of your biological DNA in order to have children in the future. The reason is because you never produced sperm. But if you went on hormone blockers, maybe a little bit on, and before you went on hormone blockers, you were able to ejaculate, usually you can actually take that substance that's ejaculated and freeze it. It is not going to be as much as if you were older and later on, but the whiter the substance, the more sperm there is and the better chance the person would be at getting pregnant and that the sperm is actually good to use. Now, if you had your natal puberty, alright, and you started estrogen maybe later on when you were, let's say 17 or 30 or so on, you can go off of estrogen for a couple of months, and then if you weren't able to ejaculate before and you can ejaculate now, you'll be able to save the sperm. But it is not a guarantee that that sperm will be good enough. I have known some trans women who have been on hormones for a couple of months and then said, oh, I would like to actually save some of my DNA. So they went off of hormones for 4 months about, and they were able to ejaculate again, and then they saved their biological DNA in order to potentially in the future have kids. So honestly, if you haven't started estrogen yet and you can ejaculate, I would recommend saving your material right now. Even if you don't even think that you want kids right now, maybe later on in the future, like if you're not sure right now, maybe in the future I'm gonna want kids. I don't know. It's a good idea to have it as a safety net, just in case I'm so glad I did that. Because if you had the opportunity to do it and you said, oh, never mind, and then 10 years later you're like, oh, I should have done that. I mean, it sucks, but you make up your mind, you do whatever you want, right? Alright, so let's move on to people who have ovaries and estrogen and who would like to talk about fertility and maybe potentially having kids in the future. So, there are two things that we're going to talk about here. The first thing is saving your eggs. Now, this is costly, alright? It costs over $15,000 US in order to extract the eggs. And then it's gonna cost $1,500 a year in order to keep those eggs and freeze them. So if you never had your natal puberty, so you never developed breasts and you never had menstruation, you're not able to do this. But if you did have your natal puberty, so you did develop breasts and you did have menstruations, okay, and it's later on, you're maybe 25 or so on, you are able to get off of testosterone. Then you will have 2 to 3 cycles of menstruations, and then you are able to extract those eggs as well. Now, it's gonna cost as much as it did, all right, and you are not guaranteed that it's gonna work 100% because your body did go through, hormone replacement therapy, you did have testosterone in your body, but keep in mind that the earlier you do this, the better, because the earlier in your life, your eggs are younger, which means that they're more fertile, they're more easier to get impregnated. Whereas if you did this later on in your life, when you're like 36 and you went off of hormones, and even if you were on, testosterone for only a couple of years, or if you were for 10 years, your eggs are older. And that's the case for anyone, right? Any cis woman who would like to get pregnant, it's better to do it when you're earlier, because when you're older, your eggs are older and it's a little bit harder, which is what they say. I mean, this is research. I'm not saying, I'm saying you're old, your eggs aren't gonna work. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that typically younger eggs are better for this. Now, sometimes there are some people who get off of testosterone, have 2 to 3 cycles, and try to get their eggs extracted, and it doesn't work. Some actually have to go on some medication. So sometimes it's hormones, extra hormones that they have to put, and other times it's other types of medication. But this is like a whole other expertise. You actually have to go to a fertility expert to talk about that, because that can get a little more complicated. Now, the second thing I want to talk about is if you, as somebody who is now on testosterone and hormone replacement therapy, would like to become pregnant. Now this is really important because it's not discussed a lot in this community. It's a very taboo subject, but I have known a lot of trans men who would like to be pregnant and a lot of non-binary folk who are on testosterone and would like to be pregnant as well. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what that entails. So just like I talked about in the previous with extracting the eggs, you are going to go off of testosterone. You're going to get 2 to 3 cycles and then you should actually be able to be pregnant. Testosterone is not birth control, okay? Just because I'm telling you that you should get off of testosterone for 2 to 3 months and then you'll get pregnant, that doesn't mean that that's the only time that you're going to get pregnant. So when somebody's on testosterone, their menstruation stops. Okay, and then you'd think, oh, I'm not menstruating, that means, you know, everything is kind of stopped down there, everything's paused, there's no eggs, nothing to be fertilized, nothing, I'm good. Nothing, there's no ovulation, it's not gonna happen. Well, that's not true, and that's a myth. So I'm here to talk to you about that because it's super important. So there's some people who have unprotected sex with people with penises who can produce sperm because they think that they're fine. I'm not gonna get pregnant, I don't bleed, no problem, it's like birth control, I'm fine. This is very, very, very false, okay? Because every month or couple of months, an egg will be released, okay? It will be there, it'll be there and it'll be ready for ovulation. This doesn't happen to everyone, but it can happen to a lot of people. So there is gonna be an egg there. Now, there's nothing to fertilize it, right? So there's no sperm that goes in, so then it just goes into the uterus. So it still goes there, but there's just no blood to shed. So that's what happens, right? If we don't know, if you never had sex ed or you never knew about the reproductive cycle, what happens is that an egg is released, all right, in the fallopian tube. If there is no sperm to fertilize it, because it's ovulating, nothing like that, it'll go into the uterus, then the lining of the uterus will shed, and that's the blood, that's the menstruation that happens every month. And that's how you know you're not pregnant. Well, because trans men don't bleed, you assume, oh, there was never anything there in the first place. That's not true, right? So the egg will be released, there's nothing to fertilize it, so it's gonna go into the uterus, but nothing sheds. Right? So the egg is actually just gonna stay there. And the older eggs from the months before, they're just dead. They're not there anymore, but you still have that one egg. So because eggs still get released, if you're having sex with someone who produces sperm, all right, and the sperm comes in contact with this egg that is, you know, you're ovulating, it may become fertilized. All right, and you can become pregnant. And the thing is that because you don't bleed every month, you know, usually cis women who bleed every month, or people who are not on testosterone yet, would assume, oh, I guess I'm pregnant. I'm not bleeding. I missed my period. I'm gonna be pregnant. You don't experience that if you're on testosterone, so you don't know. So a lot of trans men and people on testosterone find out way later on into their pregnancy that they are actually pregnant. This can be dangerous because T is teratogenic. It causes birth defects, all right? So if you are pregnant for, you know, 10 weeks or so on and you didn't know and you've been taking testosterone this whole time, you just have to monitor the pregnancy very well. But if you do end up pregnant and you do want to keep the child, you have to go off the testosterone. And of course, after you have the child and you are either done breastfeeding or you are not gonna breastfeed at all, then you can go back on testosterone, no problem. But like, just like a super important point, okay, testosterone is not birth control. I actually have known people in my life who thought testosterone was birth control, and they got pregnant. And they kept the kid, or they miscarried, or they had an abortion. So it is super, super, super important to make sure to use protection, all right? Especially condoms, especially because, like I talked about in my what are the dangers of hormone video, atrophy happens when you're on testosterone, which is the lining of the walls become thinner and more delicate. So bleeding may occur because you're kind of breaking down that skin when you're doing penetration. So if you're doing penetration and you're bleeding and you're also ovulating at the same time, although you would not know when that's happening, you have the risk of pregnancy, you have the risk of STIs, and you have the risk of HIV. So it's very dangerous, so I'm just saying, please use protection. I have made videos about STIs and stuff like that for trans men specifically. I will put the links in the description below so you can take a look. Hopefully this answered some of your questions. There's a lot more that I could say about this, but these were the most questions and most, you know, myths and stuff like that that I've seen online that I think would be interesting and important to talk about. If you have any questions or need further explaining in anything that I talked about, please let me know in the description below, and I will see you later for the next episode. Have a great day. Bye.